Long before screens glowed, ancient people gathered around stone boards and raced under open skies. From Egyptian tombs to Roman markets, games were not mere distractions. They were essential tools for teaching strategy, morality, and survival. This video uncovers 33 ancient games that shaped minds, cultures, and even history itself. By the end, you will see how these forgotten amusements still influence modern games and education, revealing a timeless human desire to play and learn. How did a simple board game guide souls through the afterlife? What made a Viking contest so crucial for training warriors? We are about to explore how play became a profound teacher across civilizations. What do you think it truly means to learn through play? The true power of these ancient games lies in their deep connection to the world they came from. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, the royal game of was far more than a simple race across a board. Its intricate squares and the path a piece would travel were likely a reflection of a spiritual journey, mirroring beliefs about destiny and the divine. Players were not just competing, they were engaging with a model of the cosmos itself, learning about fate and the favor of the gods with every roll of the dice. This was entertainment woven directly into the fabric of their understanding of the universe. Similarly, the Roman game Ludus Latrunculorum, which translates to the game of mercenaries, was a stark simulation of military tactics. Played on a grid with two opposing armies, it taught soldiers about flanking maneuvers, strategic sacrifice, and the importance of controlling the board, much like a general would need to control a battlefield. It was a classroom in disguise, turning abstract strategic concepts into tangible, learned experience. Even the materials used held meaning, from precious stones and ivory for the elite to simple scratched lines on stone for common people, reinforcing social structures through play. This seamless blend of fun and function, of play and profound meaning, set the stage for an incredible diversity of games across the ancient world. Each one offers us a unique window into the minds of those who played them, teaching us not just how they had fun, but what they feared, what they valued, and how they saw their place in the world. This purposeful integration of play into daily life reveals a universal truth about our ancestors. They did not view games as a separate activity, but as a vital thread woven into the very fabric of society. In ancient India, the elite did not just play Chaturanga for fun. They studied it. This intricate board game, the direct ancestor of modern chess, was a dynamic classroom for future kings and military commanders. Its 4 divisions of infantry, cavalry, elephantry, and chariotry mirrored the actual formations of ancient Indian armies. Every move was a lesson in tactical positioning, the value of different units, and the long-term consequences of a rash decision. It turned the abstract principles of warfare into a tangible and safe learning experience. Far to the west, the Greeks took a different, yet equally serious, approach to games. Their Olympic contests were not casual athletics. They were a profound expression of physical and moral excellence dedicated to the gods. Winning an event like the Stadion foot race or the brutal Pancratian wrestling brought immense glory not just to the individual, but to their entire city-state. These games fostered a powerful sense of civic pride and unity, while simultaneously ensuring that citizens were in peak physical condition, ready to defend their home. But not all lessons were about war or physical might. In the bustling markets of Mesopotamia and the courts of ancient China, dice games were incredibly popular. While they certainly provided excitement, they also served as a practical, if risky, school for the mind. players constantly calculated odds, assessed the potential reward against the chance of loss, and made quick decisions under pressure. This was an early, intuitive education in probability and risk assessment, skills absolutely essential for merchants, traders, and anyone navigating the uncertainties of life. Whether on a board, in a stadium, or with a roll of the dice, these activities were never just play. They were the engines of community, the transmitters of cultural values, and the training grounds for the complex challenges of the ancient world. But how do we even begin to choose which ancient games to explore from such a vast and fragmented history? The 33 games we will uncover together were not selected at random. Each one earned its place through a set of clear and rigorous criteria, ensuring our journey is both meaningful and representative. First and foremost, we looked for historical significance. Did the game leave a tangible mark? This means we prioritized games with solid archaeological evidence behind them, from actual game boards found in tombs to detailed descriptions in ancient texts. Without this physical proof, a game remains in the realm of legend. Next, we considered its educational impact. A simple pastime was not enough. The game had to demonstrate a clear purpose beyond mere amusement, whether it was teaching complex military strategy, sharpening mathematical skills, instilling ethical principles, or honing vital physical abilities. The Viking game of Hnefatafl, for instance, was a masterclass in tactical defense, pitting a king and his guards against a larger surrounding force. Meanwhile, the African game of Mancala, with its rows of pits and seeds, became a widespread tool for teaching counting and sophisticated resource management. Finally, we valued cultural reach. Games that were played across vast regions or endured for centuries tell us something universal about the human experience. They show how ideas traveled along trade routes and were adapted by different societies. This curated list is a diverse cross-section of ancient ingenuity. Every single entry, from the most famous to the most obscure, offers a unique window into the minds of our ancestors, revealing how they chose to learn, teach, and connect through the power of play. Our first game transports us to the banks of the Nile, where one of humanity's oldest known board games was more than a pastime. It was a guide for eternity. Senet emerged in predynastic Egypt over 5,000 years ago. Played on a long board of 30 squares arranged in 3 neat rows, the game used simple throwing sticks or knucklebones to determine the movement of pieces. But this was no simple race to the finish. Every roll of the dice was a step on a profound spiritual journey, a symbolic voyage through the treacherous Egyptian underworld known as the Duat. The board itself was a map of the soul's perilous passage, with specific squares depicting divine favors or deadly hazards. Landing on a square of rebirth could save you, while a square of drowning could send you back to start, forcing you to confront your fate once more. This was not a game you played to win for mere bragging rights. You played to understand the will of the gods, to learn about the fragility of existence, and to prepare your own soul for the challenges that awaited after death. This profound spiritual significance is why Senet boards were so commonly placed in tombs, right alongside other essential grave goods. They were not parting gifts for boredom in the afterlife. They were vital tools, a divine guidebook etched onto wood or stone, intended to ensure the deceased could successfully navigate the perils of the Duat and achieve immortality. Through this blend of chance and strategy, players of all ages internalized the core principles of Egyptian cosmology. They learned that life, like a game of Senet, was a mix of fate and personal choice, where resilience in the face of setback and respect for divine will were the ultimate keys to victory. While Senet prepared the soul for the afterlife, another Egyptian game coiled its way into daily life, teaching lessons of community and cosmic balance. This was Mehen, the serpent game, named for a protective deity who wrapped around the sun god Ra during his nightly journey through the underworld. The game's very form was a symbol. Its board was a perfect spiral, a coiled snake with its head at the center and its tail on the outer edge. Players did not compete alone. They worked in teams, guiding small marbles and lion-shaped figurines along the serpent's body, racing from the dangerous outer tail to the safe central head. This was not a solitary struggle against fate, but a shared endeavor. The game required players to balance cooperation with competition, to strategize together while still aiming to be the first to reach the goal. It mirrored the Egyptian understanding of the universe, a place where order constantly had to be defended against chaos. Just as the god Mehen protected Ra from the forces of darkness, players learned about protection, collective security, and the importance of each member in a group. The lion pieces, symbols of power and authority, reinforced this lesson in social hierarchy and strength. Unlike the solemn, spiritual journey of Senet, Mehen was likely a lively, social activity filled with conversation and interaction. It was a tool for reinforcing community values, teaching both children and adults about their role within a larger system. Through its unique coiled design and cooperative play, Mehen turned a simple race across a board into a profound lesson about the interconnectedness of life, the need for protection, and the delicate balance between working together and striving for individual achievement. Buried deep within the royal tombs of ancient a spectacular board lay waiting for centuries. Crafted around 2600 BCE, the royal game of is a Mesopotamian masterpiece of artistry and intellect. Its board, a stunning mosaic of shell, lapis lazuli, and red limestone, features 20 elaborately decorated squares. Players would have held beautifully carved pieces, moving them along the board's unique, winding path according to the roll of distinctive pyramid-shaped dice. This was far more than a simple race game. Every move was a lesson in calculated risk. A player might have a clear path to victory, but a single unlucky roll could see their piece captured and sent back to the start, forcing them to weigh the safety of their advanced pieces against the potential reward of pushing forward. This constant evaluation of threat and opportunity was a masterclass in probability and forward planning, skills essential for any ruler or merchant navigating the complex economies of the ancient Near East. But the game's purpose ran even deeper than strategy. Cuneiform inscriptions found on later versions of the game board reveal it was also used for divination. Certain squares were thought to hold prophetic meanings, linking a player's fortune in the game to the favor of the gods and the unfolding of their destiny. A single session was both a thrilling contest and a glimpse into the divine will, blending entertainment with spiritual inquiry. The discovery of virtually identical boards from Mesopotamia to Crete and Egypt tells a remarkable story of cultural connection. This was one of the world's first international games, a shared language of play that transmitted ideas, beliefs, and pure amusement across vast distances and countless civilizations. From the ornate royal courts of we journey to the heart of a different kind of empire, one built on discipline, order, and military might. In the shadow of the Roman legions, a different kind of battle was being waged, not with swords but with simple stones on a grid. This was Ludus Latrunculorum, the game of mercenaries or little soldiers. Far from a casual diversion, it was a rigorous exercise in pure strategy, a thinking person's war game played across the ancient Roman world. The board was a simple grid, often scratched onto stone or pavement, and the pieces were typically small stones or glass tokens in two opposing colors. But the simplicity of its components belied the incredible complexity of its play. The objective was deceptively straightforward: to capture your opponent's pieces by trapping them between two of your own, much like in modern checkers, or to strategically immobilize their forces. Every move demanded deep foresight. A player had to constantly anticipate their opponent's responses several turns ahead, weighing aggressive attacks against the need for a strong defense. It was a relentless mental workout in tactical maneuvering, forcing players to think like a general commanding a legion. The game's military applications were direct and intentional. Roman officers used it to drill soldiers in the core principles of warfare. The act of flanking an enemy piece mirrored the battlefield tactic of surrounding an opponent's forces. The need to maintain a solid line of defense taught the importance of formation and cohesion. A reckless, aggressive move could leave your own pieces vulnerable and lead to a swift defeat, a powerful lesson in the consequences of impulsivity. Through this abstract contest, soldiers internalized the virtues Rome prized most: critical thinking under pressure, the patience to wait for the perfect moment to strike, and the adaptability to salvage a plan when fortune turned against them. Ludus Latrunculorum was a classroom in sand or stone, proving that the most enduring lessons in strategy often begin not with a command, but with a simple challenge. Your move. While Roman soldiers honed their tactics on the grid of Ludus Latrunculorum, another game thrived in the city's bustling taverns and luxurious villas, one where strategy met pure chance. Duodecim Scripta, the game of 12 lines, was a Roman sensation. Its board was a long field marked by 3 rows of 12 symbolic points, and the goal was a familiar race, to move all 15 of your pieces across the board and off the other side, guided by the roll of 3 dice. This was the direct and vibrant ancestor of the backgammon we know today, but in ancient Rome it was far more than a simple race. Every roll forced a player to make a critical calculation. Do you advance a single piece quickly, leaving it vulnerable to being sent back to the start if an opponent lands on it? Or do you slowly build a blockade of multiple pieces, a defensive wall that is safe but might cost you the lead? This constant dance between aggressive advancement and cautious defense was a masterclass in practical mathematics and probability. Players were not just moving pieces, they were instinctively learning to calculate odds, to weigh potential rewards against immediate risks with every throw of the dice. Gambling on the outcome was incredibly common, turning each match into a high-stakes lesson in risk assessment that mirrored the daily anxieties of Roman commerce and politics. The game itself was a mirror of Roman society. The elite played on lavish boards crafted from precious materials like ivory and gold, while common citizens made do with boards hastily scratched onto stone steps or floors. Yet, regardless of their station, everyone was engaging in the same mental exercise. A wealthy senator and a common shopkeeper both had to confront the same fickle whims of fortune, the same need for a backup plan when the dice turned against them. Duodecim Scripta was a light-hearted teacher, a game that wrapped serious lessons in probability, strategic foresight, and the management of luck into an evening of social excitement and friendly competition. Yet even as Romans gambled on their boards of 12 lines, the Greeks had long mastered a purer form of strategic warfare, one without any dice at all. In the symposiums and schools of ancient Greece, a different kind of battle of wits unfolded on a simple grid. This was Peteia, the game of pebbles, a contest of pure intellect praised by the greatest minds of the era. Homer himself mentioned it in the Odyssey, and later, philosophers like Plato held it in high regard for its power to shape a disciplined mind. The rules were elegantly simple. 2 players arranged their identical pieces on a grid, and the goal was capture. A piece was taken when an opponent managed to sandwich it between 2 of their own, a move that required immense foresight and spatial awareness. This was not a game of chance. There were no dice to blame for a loss. Victory depended entirely on logical reasoning and the ability to predict your opponent's moves several steps ahead. Every match was a silent dialogue of threats and counter-threats, a relentless exercise in predictive thinking that philosophers believed was essential training for any free citizen. The game was a staple in Greek education for a profound reason. It taught the youth about the direct consequences of every decision. A poorly considered move could lead to the immediate loss of a valuable piece, a stark lesson in the cost of impulsivity. It demanded patience, forcing players to set up complex traps rather than launch reckless attacks. And perhaps most importantly, it instilled a deep sense of competitive fairness, as both players began with equal forces on an open board, where victory was earned by intellect alone. Petaia's simplicity belied its incredible depth, making it a timeless tool for cognitive development. It was a classroom without walls, a philosophical gymnasium where citizens trained their minds for the complexities of civic life, debate, and even military command, all through the silent, strategic movement of simple stones. The quiet, cerebral contests of the Greek Petaia give way to the roar of the northern seas. In the great halls of the Vikings, where firelight danced on shields, a different kind of warfare played out on a checkered board. This was Nefertafel, the king's table. Far from a simple pastime, this game was a brutal and elegant simulation of the Viking world itself, a world of raids, defense, and desperate escapes. The board was a battlefield of unequal forces, a core concept that made it utterly unique. One player commanded a small, elite force of defenders, just 12 men guarding a single king positioned at the center. The other player controlled a much larger attacking army, 24 warriors positioned around the edges of the board. The objectives were as asymmetric as the forces themselves. The king's side had one goal: to guide their monarch to the safety of any one of the 4 corner squares, which represented friendly territory or a waiting longship. The attackers had a different, more aggressive aim: to capture the king before he could escape, trapping him so he could not move. Every move was a lesson in the harsh realities of Viking life. The outnumbered defenders learned the supreme value of coordination and sacrifice. They had to form protective shields around their king, using their fewer pieces to create corridors of escape, understanding that sometimes a warrior must stand his ground to be captured so the king can live. They learned patience and precise timing, knowing a rash move could break their defensive formation and spell disaster. The attackers, despite their numerical advantage, learned that sheer force was not enough. They had to think like raiders, encircling their prey, cutting off routes of escape, and anticipating the defenders' every desperate gambit. They practiced the art of the ambush on a checkered grid. This was not just a game, it was a training tool for future chieftains and raiding party leaders. It taught young Vikings how to assess a lopsided battlefield, how to allocate limited resources under extreme pressure, and how teamwork could overcome overwhelming odds. The balance of power was never equal, and that was the entire point. Victory for either side was never guaranteed by numbers alone. It was always earned by the sharper strategy, the deeper patience, and the clearer understanding of your opponent's mind. Nefertafel turned the Viking ethos of cunning and resilience into a tangible, playable lesson, one that could mean the difference between life and death on a real battlefield. But the Vikings' asymmetric warfare on the checkered board of Nefertafel was not the only way to teach strategy through play. In the heart of Rome, a different game mastered the delicate balance between sheer luck and cold calculation. This was tabula. The name simply means table or board, but this game was anything but simple. It was a Roman obsession, a thrilling race where the roll of dice dictated every move. Players would line up their pieces on a long board divided into 24 points, all aiming for one goal: to be the first to move all of their pieces around the track and off the board. The game's most famous devotee was Emperor Claudius himself, who was said to be so enthralled by tabula that he had a special board fitted to his carriage so he could play while traveling across the empire. But you did not need to be an emperor to enjoy it. Tabula was played everywhere, from smoky taverns where soldiers gambled their wages to the elegant courtyards of wealthy patricians. Every roll of the dice presented a critical choice. Do you advance a single piece quickly, risking it being hit and sent back to the start if your opponent lands on that point? Or do you slowly build a prime, a wall of multiple pieces that blocks your opponent's advance but might slow down your own escape? This constant decision-making was a masterclass in practical mathematics. Players were not just moving pieces, they were instinctively calculating odds, learning to manage risk, and developing backup plans for when fortune turned against them. Gambling was woven into the very fabric of the game, making every match a high-stakes lesson in assessing reward versus consequence, a skill vital for any Roman navigating commerce or politics. More than just a game of chance, tabula was a social engine. It brought people together across class lines, all bound by the same unpredictable twists of fate. A wealthy senator and a common merchant both had to bow to the same roll of the dice, learning humility and resilience in the face of luck's fickle nature. The legacy of tabula did not end with Rome. It evolved, its core mechanics traveling through time to become the game we know today as backgammon. This enduring journey shows us that the ancient desire to blend exciting chance with thoughtful strategy, to learn life's lessons through the roll of a die, is a thread that connects us directly to the Romans. From the Roman Empire's fixation on dice and boards, we cross continents to the sophisticated courts of ancient India, where a game of profound strategic depth was quietly taking shape. This was Chaturanga, the undeniable ancestor of modern chess, born in the intellectual heart of the Gupta Empire around 600 CE. Its name, meaning 4 divisions, was a direct reflection of the army it so brilliantly simulated. The game pieces were not abstract shapes but represented the core units of classical Indian warfare: the infantry, the cavalry, the elephantry, and the chariotry. Each piece moved in a distinct way that mirrored its real-world counterpart on the battlefield. The foot soldiers advanced slowly but steadily. The horses could leap over obstacles. The elephants moved with powerful but limited range, and the chariots raced across the board. At the center of it all stood the king, the most vital piece whose capture meant the end of the game. This was not a simple pastime. It was a dynamic, living classroom for future rulers and military commanders. Young princes and nobles did not just play Chaturanga for amusement, they studied it. Every match was a rigorous exercise in military theory, forcing players to think several moves ahead, to anticipate their opponent's strategies, and to understand the delicate art of resource allocation. Do you sacrifice a powerful elephant to expose a weakness in your opponent's defense? How do you protect your king while simultaneously mounting an offensive? These were the very same decisions a general would face in war, but here the consequences were learned on a board, not a battlefield. The game's ultimate objective, to achieve checkmate, was a lesson in total victory, teaching that the goal was not merely to kill the enemy king, but to strategically trap him with no hope of escape. This brilliant fusion of entertainment and education ensured its survival and spread. Traders and diplomats carried Chaturanga along the Silk Road to Persia, where it was renamed Shatranj and its rules were refined. From there, its influence traveled across the Muslim world and into Europe, slowly evolving over centuries into the global phenomenon of chess. Chaturanga's enduring legacy is a powerful testament to a simple truth: that the most profound lessons in strategy, foresight, and critical thinking can be delivered not through a lecture, but through the silent, thoughtful movement of pieces on a board. While chess and its ancestors simulated the clash of armies, another ancient game conceived of conflict on a far grander, more philosophical scale. In China, over 2,500 years ago, the game of Go emerged, and it remains one of humanity's most profound and elegant strategic creations. Its components are the essence of simplicity, a grid of 19 by 19 lines, and a bowl of smooth black and white stones for each player. The objective seems straightforward: to use your stones to surround more empty territory on the board than your opponent. But this apparent simplicity is a beautiful deception, masking a universe of almost infinite complexity. Unlike the direct, piece-capturing battles of chess, Go is a game of subtle influence, gradual expansion, and delicate balance. Each stone placed is not an attack, but a statement of potential, a claim on a tiny part of the board's future. The real struggle is not to destroy your opponent's forces, but to make their positions inefficient and unsustainable, to slowly choke off their options until their stones are no longer viable. This is why Chinese scholars and military generals revered Go for centuries. It was not just a game, it was a moving meditation on strategy itself. For a scholar, it cultivated a Zen-like mindfulness and patience, teaching the value of seeing the whole board, not just the local skirmish. Every move required a balance between securing your own territory and reducing your opponent's, a constant lesson in strategic allocation of effort. For a general, the board was a map of a campaign. The stones represented not soldiers but entire divisions and their sphere of influence. The game taught the art of strategic encirclement, the patience for a long campaign, and the adaptability to respond to an opponent's unexpected gambits. A player who focuses only on a small, aggressive fight in one corner will often lose the entire war across the rest of the board. This emphasis on the bigger picture, on long-term planning over short-term gains, is what makes Go a timeless metaphor for life itself. It teaches that the most powerful moves are often quiet and positional, not loud and aggressive. That sometimes you must sacrifice a small group of stones to secure a much larger victory elsewhere. Even today, Go is revered as the ultimate tool for intellectual growth, a game that reveals more about your own mind and your approach to complex problems with every single stone you place. The profound strategic silence of Go stands in stark contrast to the raucous, lively atmosphere of another ancient Chinese game. Liu Bo, the Six Sticks game, thrived during the Han Dynasty as a vibrant social spectacle. Played on a distinctive curved board, the game was a whirlwind of chance, strategy, and ritual. Players would cast a set of 6 specially marked throwing sticks, their outcome determining the movement of game pieces across the board's intricate path. But this was far more than a simple race. A Liu Bo session was a full sensory experience, often accompanied by music, poetry, and copious amounts of drinking, transforming it into a celebrated aristocratic pastime. The exact rules have been lost to time, shrouding the game in mystery, but we know it masterfully blended the cold calculation of strategy with the exhilarating unpredictability of fate. Every throw of the sticks was a lesson in risk assessment. A player might have a perfect strategy laid out, only to have it completely upended by an unlucky cast, forcing them to adapt and improvise. This taught a crucial social skill for the elite, the graceful acceptance of fortune's whims, whether in a game or in the courts of power. Elaborate Liu Bo sets excavated from Han tombs, crafted from jade, ivory, and precious woods, reveal its status as a luxury object. Yet its purpose ran deeper than opulent amusement. The game was deeply intertwined with divination and spiritual practices. The act of throwing the sticks was seen as a way to consult the will of the heavens, making each move a step in a cosmic dialogue. Players were not just competing against each other, they were engaging with the unseen forces of the universe, learning about destiny and their place within a larger, mysterious order. Liubo perfectly illustrates how ancient games were rarely just games. They were complex social rituals that wrapped profound lessons in cosmology, etiquette, and chance within an evening of lively, unforgettable entertainment. Far from the quiet contemplation of Go, a game of vibrant spectacle and high stakes echoed through the temples and marketplaces of Mesoamerica. For the Aztecs, Patoli was not a simple diversion. It was a sacred drama where fortunes were won, lost, and offered to the gods. Played on a unique cross-shaped board, often painted on the ground or on a woven mat, the game was a whirlwind of chance, calculation, and deep spiritual belief. Players would cast beans marked with holes that served as dice, their score dictating the movement of colorful pebbles around the board's 52 squares, a number sacred to the Aztec calendar. But this was far more than a race. Every move was a gamble in the truest sense, as players wagered their most precious possessions, from gleaming jade beads and gold ornaments to blankets, food, and even their own freedom. The potential for ruin was very real, making each throw of the beans a heart-pounding lesson in risk and reward. This was a harsh but effective school for mathematics and probability. Players had to constantly calculate the odds of certain bean throws, weigh the value of their bets against the potential gain, and manage their dwindling resources under intense pressure. Yet Patoli's purpose soared far beyond mere arithmetic. It was a deeply religious act, almost always dedicated to Nhualcoatl, the god of games, music, and dance. A successful player was not just lucky, they were divinely favored. A devastating loss could be interpreted as a necessary sacrifice to appease the gods. In this way, the game taught a core Aztec tenet, that human life was intertwined with the whims of fate and divine will, and that even play was a form of communication with the cosmos. Beyond the temple, Patoli strengthened the very fabric of Aztec society. It was a powerful engine for economic exchange, redistributing wealth and goods throughout the community in a festive, ritualized context. It brought people together, forging bonds through shared excitement and collective tension. From the mathematical calculations of a merchant to the spiritual surrender of a priest, Patoli was a complete educational experience, a vibrant mirror reflecting the Aztec world in all its complexity, where chance and destiny danced together on a cross-shaped board. Yet the sacred gamble of Patoli was not the only game where Aztec lives could be won or lost. On the immense stone courts of Mesoamerica, a far more physical and perilous ritual unfolded. This was Ullamalistli, the famed ball game, and it was far more than a sport, played with a heavy, solid rubber ball on a long, eye-shaped court flanked by towering walls. The game was a breathtaking spectacle of athleticism and profound religious significance. Teams, often representing different city-states or deities, battled to keep the ball in constant motion using only their hips, elbows, and knees, aiming to pass it through one of the two stone rings mounted high on the court's side walls. The physical demands were extraordinary. Players wore protective leather padding and belts, but the impact of the dense ball could still cause severe injury. This was a brutal school for the body, teaching incredible agility, lightning-fast reflexes, and the endurance to play for hours under the blazing sun. But every match was also a lesson in cosmic order. The ball itself represented the sun, and the court was a model of the universe. The struggle to keep the celestial body in motion, to guide it through the ring which symbolized a portal to the other world, reenacted the eternal battle between the forces of light and darkness, life and death. A victory was not just a point on a scoreboard, it was a sign of divine favor, a confirmation that the gods were pleased and cosmic balance was maintained. The stakes were the highest imaginable. In certain deeply religious versions of the game, the outcome was a matter of life and death. Some historical accounts and carvings suggest that the captain of the losing team, or sometimes even the entire team, could be sacrificed to the gods. This horrifying possibility was not seen as a punishment, but as the ultimate honor, a direct offering to ensure the sun would rise again and the world would continue. Through this intense physical and spiritual trial, players and spectators alike learned about discipline, absolute reverence for the gods, and the sobering truth that their actions were part of a cosmic drama far larger than themselves. Ullamalistli was the ultimate teacher, a game that fused athletic prowess, unwavering teamwork, and deep cosmological belief into a single, powerful ritual that resonated with the very cycle of life itself. But the immense stone courts of the ball game were not the only place where fate was decided. Far from the grand rituals, a simpler, more personal tool of chance rattled in the hands of children and elders alike. Knucklebones, the ankle bones of sheep or goats, were one of the most universal gaming objects in the ancient world. In Greece, they were known as astragaloi, and their use spanned from dusty village streets to the halls of philosophers. These small, irregularly shaped bones with 4 distinct sides were the ancient world's dice. Players would toss a handful of them, and the score was determined by which of the 4 sides landed face up, each position having its own value. But this was far more than a simple game of chance. One popular version was a test of pure skill and dexterity, strikingly similar to the modern game of jacks. A player would toss a single bone into the air and then, with lightning speed, had to scoop up a specific number of bones from the ground before catching the one they had tossed. This was a brilliant, hands-on exercise for developing fine motor skills, hand-eye coordination, and quick reflexes, making it a favorite pastime for children across empires. Yet the humble knucklebone held a deeper, more solemn power. They were also one of the most common tools for divination. A priest, a general, or even a common farmer seeking guidance would cast a set of astragaloi and carefully read their arrangement, interpreting the fall of the bones as a direct message from the gods, an omen foretelling the outcome of a battle, a harvest, or a journey. This dual purpose made the game a profound teacher. For a child, it was a playful way to learn counting and develop physical agility. For an adult, it was a tangible connection to the unpredictable forces of the universe, a constant reminder that life was a blend of skill and sheer, unmanageable luck. Through the simple act of tossing a set of bones, players of all ages internalized a fundamental ancient belief that while you could practice and improve your own abilities, the final outcome always rested in the hands of fate. While Knucklebones taught of fate's whims, another ancient game cultivated the precise opposite, the power of careful planning and absolute control over resources. Across the vast expanse of Africa and the Middle East, for thousands of years, the quiet click of seeds or stones moving between carved pits has been a constant sound. This is Mancala, a family of games so deeply woven into daily life that the board was often nothing more than rows of holes dug into the earth. The basic setup is beautifully simple, 2 parallel rows of pits, each initially holding an equal number of seeds. Players take turns picking up all the seeds from one pit on their side and sowing them, one by one, into subsequent pits in a counter-clockwise direction. The goal is to capture your opponent's seeds through a precise set of rules, but the real objective is a masterclass in the mind. This was never just a game. For farming communities, it was a direct simulation of the most vital cycle of their lives, the act of sowing seeds and reaping a harvest. every move was a lesson in resource management. Do you empty a pit with many seeds for a potentially large payoff later? Or do you make smaller, more strategic moves to deny your opponent opportunities? Players had to constantly count and recount, predicting not only their own gains but how their move would set up their opponent's next turn. It was a relentless exercise in arithmetic and foresight, teaching the crucial connection between immediate action and long-term consequence. A child playing Mancala was not merely passing time. They were internalizing the fundamentals of mathematics, learning to calculate distributions and outcomes without even realizing they were in a classroom. The game also taught a deeper, more philosophical lesson about adaptability. A perfectly planned strategy could be completely undone by a single move from an opponent, forcing a player to recalibrate their entire approach instantly. This need to stay flexible, to manage your resources under changing conditions, was a direct mirror of the uncertainties of agriculture and life itself. Mancala's incredible endurance, with countless local variants still played today, is a powerful testament to its genius. It proves that the most effective teachers are often the simplest ones, using basic mechanics to cultivate sophisticated skills in logic, patience, and strategic foresight that last a lifetime. Under the sprawling canopies of the Mughal courts, a game of immense scale and royal intrigue unfolded. This was Pachisi, the grand ancestor of the game we now know as Pachisi. Played on a magnificent cross-shaped cloth board, its design was a cosmic map in miniature, with each arm representing a different path to the center, the ultimate goal. The name itself, Pachisi, comes from the Hindi word for 25, the highest score possible from a single throw of the 6 cowrie shells used as dice. But for the emperors, a simple board was not enough. Historical accounts describe Emperor Akbar playing a life-sized version in his courtyard at Fatehpur Sikri. The marble paving itself became the board, and the pieces were not carved tokens but 16 beautiful court ladies from his harem, dressed in distinct colors, moving along the paths as the royal dice were cast. This was a spectacle of power, a living game that demonstrated the emperor's absolute command over his court and his domain. Yet, beneath this opulent display lay a game of deep strategic nuance. Every throw of the cowrie shells was a lesson in probability, their curved backs offering odds far more complex than modern cubic dice. Players had to constantly calculate risks, deciding whether to advance a single piece rapidly or to slowly bring all their pieces out onto the board to create a formidable blockade. This act of blocking an opponent's path was a masterclass in tactical negotiation and assertive play, forcing rivals to either wait patiently or find costly alternate routes. The entire game mirrored the dynamics of an empire itself. Just as a ruler had to navigate political alliances, rival factions, and unexpected setbacks, a Pachisi player had to guide their pieces through a labyrinth of opportunities and obstacles, all while contending with the fickle whims of chance. It was a social engine, bringing families and entire courts together for an evening of shared excitement that subtly taught patience, the graceful acceptance of bad luck, and the thrill of a well-executed strategic victory. The journey of Pachisi from the royal courts of India to the family game nights of the modern world as Pachisi and Ludo is a powerful testament to its enduring design, a perfect blend of luck and strategy that continues to teach and entertain across centuries and cultures. While Pachisi unfolded on a grand, imperial scale, Greek philosophers often gathered around a far simpler board for a different kind of mental exercise. Known as the game of 5 lines, its playing field was nothing more than 5 parallel lines scratched onto a stone or a wooden tablet. Players would move their pieces along these lines based on the roll of dice, but the objective was far more nuanced than a simple race. Victory required forming specific, predetermined patterns with your pieces or strategically capturing your opponent's tokens by landing on their position. This elegant design made it a direct precursor to countless modern alignment and pattern recognition games. Every move was a deliberate puzzle. A player had to constantly visualize the board not just as it was, but as it could be several turns ahead, calculating how to assemble their own winning formation while simultaneously blocking their rival from doing the same. This relentless focus on spatial arrangement and anticipating sequences honed two crucial cognitive skills: pattern recognition and strategic foresight. It was a rigorous workout for the logical mind, which is precisely why Greek philosophers held it in such high esteem. They saw it not as a mere amusement, but as essential training for clear, disciplined thought. At symposia, the intellectual drinking parties that were a cornerstone of Greek aristocratic life, this game was a staple form of entertainment. Guests would debate, drink, and play, engaging in friendly but fierce competitions that sharpened their wits. Its beauty lay in its perfect balance. The rules were simple enough for anyone to learn quickly, making it wonderfully accessible. Yet the strategic possibilities within those 5 lines were deep enough to challenge the greatest minds for a lifetime. It perfectly illustrates the ancient Greek ideal of a sound mind in a sound body, demonstrating how a seemingly trivial game could be a powerful tool for preparing the intellect to face the complex, pattern-based problems of philosophy, politics, and science. Yet even as Roman soldiers mastered the complex maneuvers of Ludus Latrunculorum, a simpler, more direct form of tactical training was never far from reach. Latrones, a name that translates directly to soldiers or mercenaries, was the workhorse of Roman military games. Its board was a basic grid, often hastily scratched onto a stone step or a piece of wood, and its pieces were simple stones or pottery shards. The objective was brutally straightforward: to capture all of your opponent's pieces. This was achieved not by complex rules, but by the fundamental act of surrounding an enemy piece between 2 of your own, a move that echoed the basic battlefield tactic of flanking and annihilation. For a young recruit, this was the purest form of strategic education. Every move was a lesson in initiative. Do you advance aggressively to pressure your opponent, risking that your own pieces might be left isolated and vulnerable? Or do you hold back, building a strong defensive formation that can slowly advance and overwhelm? The game forced a constant evaluation of risk and reward, teaching the value of patience and the critical importance of maintaining a cohesive line. Unlike its more sophisticated cousin, Latrones was accessible to everyone. It required no expensive board or finely carved pieces, making it the perfect pastime for legionaries in camp, or children Chinese letter their fathers in the forum. This simplicity was its greatest strength. It distilled the chaos of warfare down to its most essential elements: movement and positioning. A soldier learning Latrones was not just playing a game, he was internalizing the very grammar of Roman combat, the instinct to work with the man next to him to surround a common foe. It fostered a fiercely competitive environment where quick thinking and spatial awareness were rewarded with victory. This was how Rome built its military machine, not just with drills and discipline, but with games that turned abstract concepts like formation and initiative into instinct, one captured piece at a time. Deep within the tombs of Egypt's Middle Kingdom, a beautifully carved board in the shape of a palm tree offered a different kind of challenge. This was the game of Hounds and Jackals, a captivating blend of luck, strategy, and deep symbolism. Its board was not a simple grid but an intricate field of 58 holes, all connected by a winding, maze-like path. Players did not use simple stones, but elegant, carved pieces topped with the heads of these 2 animals, one side using slender hounds and the other using cunning jackals. Each player would roll dice, often in the form of knucklebones or throwing sticks, to determine how many holes their hooked piece could advance along the track. But this was far more than a simple race. The path was fraught with strategic decisions. A player might choose to advance a single piece rapidly, hoping for a quick victory, or slowly move multiple pieces to block their opponent's path and create a defensive line. Every roll demanded a tactical choice, teaching players to weigh immediate gains against long-term consequences, to manage risk, and to adapt their strategy to the unpredictable will of chance. Yet the game's true lesson was woven into its very theme. The eternal race between the loyal, orderly hound and the wild, chaotic jackal was a powerful metaphor for the central struggle in Egyptian cosmology. Players were not just competing against each other, they were acting out the constant battle between Maat, the divine order of the universe, and Isfet, the forces of chaos and disorder. A successful player learned that victory required a balance of both the hound's disciplined strategy and the jackal's opportunistic cunning, a profound moral lesson about the nature of a harmonious life. This elegant fusion of exciting gameplay and cultural storytelling made it immensely popular, found in the tombs of pharaohs and scratched onto the floors of common homes. It was a game that entertained every level of society while quietly enriching their understanding of the world, proving that even a simple race could be a journey through the very heart of Egyptian belief. But beyond the structured boards and carved pieces lay a far more primal form of play, one that required no equipment but a set of dice and a willingness to tempt fate. Pastimes, a medieval dice game whose name literally means past 10, was a whirlwind of pure chance. Players would cast 3 dice, their hearts racing as the cubes tumbled, betting that the total sum would exceed that magic number. The thrill was immediate, the outcome decided in a single, breathless moment. Yet this simple gamble was far older than the medieval taverns it filled with noise and excitement. Its roots stretch back to the bustling marketplaces of Rome and the symposiums of Greece, where citizens of every class were already captivated by the roll of the dice. Every throw was a rapid-fire lesson in probability. A player did not need to know complex mathematics to understand that rolling a 10 was far more likely than rolling an 18. Through constant play, they developed an intuitive, gut-level grasp of odds, learning to calculate risk and potential reward almost instantly. This was a harsh but effective school for the mind, forcing quick decisions under the intense pressure of a wager. The game's true classroom, however, was the social world of the tavern or market stall. Here, people from all walks of life gathered, and the game became a powerful engine for interaction. Players learned to negotiate stakes, to read the bluffs of their opponents, and to manage their limited resources of coins or goods amidst the unpredictable swings of fortune. A merchant might learn to hedge his bets just as he would in a business deal. A farmer might learn when to walk away from a loss, a vital skill for surviving a bad harvest. While the church often frowned upon its association with gambling, Pastimes was subtly preparing individuals for the immense uncertainties of daily life in the medieval world. It honed the mental agility needed to assess a situation quickly, to make a decision with imperfect information, and to manage both victory and defeat with a level head. In its own chaotic way, this simple dice game was a master teacher, proving that some of the most enduring lessons are learned not in silence, but in the noisy, excited clamor of a chance well taken. While the clatter of dice echoed in medieval taverns, a far more refined and strategic contest was unfolding within the marble halls of the Byzantine Empire. This was Latrunculorum, a chess variant as intricate and sophisticated as the empire itself. played not on a standard square board but on a unique circular one. Zatrikian was a brilliant fusion of its Persian and Indian predecessors, reshaped by Byzantine ingenuity. Its very design was a statement, a symbolic nod to the empire's position as the circular, unifying center of the world, where Eastern and Western influences seamlessly merged. The game was a favorite pastime of emperors, generals, and scholars, a dynamic classroom for the empire's elite. Each piece, from the lowly foot soldier to the powerful king, represented a facet of Byzantine society and military structure. A player learned the critical importance of hierarchy, understanding that every piece, no matter how seemingly insignificant, had a role to play in the grand strategy. Every move was a lesson in statecraft and military planning, forcing players to think like emperors, to protect their own center of power while simultaneously looking for weaknesses in their opponent's defenses. The circular board added a layer of complexity unseen in other chess games, eliminating corners and creating a continuous field of engagement that demanded constant vigilance and adaptability. This was not a game of brute force but of elegant maneuvering, mirroring the Byzantine preference for diplomacy and cunning over outright confrontation. A session of Zatrikian was a masterclass in the subtle arts of governance, teaching patience, the foresight to anticipate an opponent's moves several turns ahead, and the flexibility to alter a strategy when faced with an unexpected threat. It served as a powerful diplomatic tool, a shared language of intellect that could bridge cultural divides during tense negotiations with foreign envoys. Through this elegant game, the Byzantine elite internalized the very skills that sustained their empire for a millennium, proving that the most enduring lessons in leadership are often learned not on a battlefield, but quietly, over a round board of beautifully carved pieces. Beyond the quiet intensity of the board, Viking strategy thundered across open fields. The game of cub, often called Viking chess, transformed any grassy plain into a training ground for both body and mind. Two teams would face each other, a collection of wooden blocks called cubs arranged on the field between them. The goal was deceptively simple: to throw wooden batons and knock over the opposing team's cubs, culminating in the final toppling of the king, a larger central block. But this was no mere test of strength. Every throw was a lesson in physics and precision. A player had to calculate the weight of the baton, the distance to the target, and the perfect arc to ensure a clean, powerful hit. This honed hand-eye coordination to a razor's edge, a skill absolutely vital for a Viking warrior aiming a spear or hurling an axe in the heat of battle. The game was a brilliant simulation of small unit tactics. Players had to work together, communicating silently to decide which cub to target first, whether to clear a path for a teammate or focus on a strategic piece that blocked their angle of attack. It taught the importance of target prioritization, of weakening an enemy's formation before going for the decisive blow against their leader. The shared experience of competition, the roar of triumph when a baton found its mark, and the collective groan of a near miss, all served to forge unbreakable bonds of camaraderie. Cub was a holistic teacher, blending vigorous physical exercise with sharp tactical thinking, all under the guise of a community celebration. Its survival into the modern day, played in parks and backyards around the world, is a testament to its perfect design, proving that the best lessons in strategy and teamwork are not learned in a classroom, but standing in the grass with a wooden baton in your hand, ready to take your best throw. Xianqi thundered onto the scene as a distinctly Chinese evolution of ancient strategic warfare. Known as Chinese chess, this game emerged from the same roots as Chaturanga, but it was forged in the fires of China's own military history and philosophical traditions. The board itself tells a story divided by a river that cuts across the center, separating the two opposing kingdoms, each with a 9-point palace guarding its general. The pieces are not abstract shapes but carry the names and roles of a classical Chinese army, from the general and his Mandarin advisors to the elephants, chariots, and soldiers. This was not a quiet game of contemplation, but a dynamic simulation of rapid battlefield tactics. Where Western chess often involves long, methodical build-ups, Xianqi is a whirlwind of immediate threats and swift, decisive strikes. The presence of the river is not just a barrier, it is a strategic element that limits the movement of certain pieces, forcing players to constantly adapt their plans and think about the terrain, just as a real general would. Scholars and military commanders did not just play this game, they studied it, seeing in its rapid exchanges a masterclass in critical decision-making under pressure. Every move required a player to assess multiple simultaneous threats, to calculate the immediate consequences of an attack, while also planning several steps ahead to counter the inevitable response. But the game's most brilliant and unique feature is the cannon. This piece cannot capture an enemy directly. It must jump over another piece, any piece, to take its target. This single rule adds a breathtaking layer of complexity, turning the entire board into a shifting landscape of potential levers and traps. A player must learn to see not just the pieces, but the relationships between them, using their own and even their opponent's forces as platforms for devastating attacks. This teaches a profound lesson in creativity and adaptability, showing that resources, even obstacles, can be repurposed in an instant to achieve victory. Xianqi remains a vital educational tool across Asia, a living testament to how an ancient game can perfectly mirror the strategic mind of a culture, preserving timeless lessons of warfare and wit within the boundaries of a board, a river, and a palace. The elegant circular board of Byzantine Zatrikion represents one vision of imperial strategy, but another game, born in ancient Persia, embraced a far more chaotic truth. Nard, the revered ancestor of backgammon, was not a quiet contemplation of war, but a vibrant dance with fate itself, played on a board strikingly similar to the one we know today, with 24 points divided into 4 quadrants. The game was a masterful blend of cold calculation and exhilarating chance. Players would roll dice to determine the movement of their pieces, racing to bear them all off the board, yet every roll was a critical decision point. Do you advance a lone runner quickly, hoping for a swift victory but risking it being hit and sent back to the start? Or do you slowly build a prime, a wall of multiple pieces that blocks your opponent's advance but might slow your own escape? This constant evaluation was a profound, hands-on lesson in probability and tactical blocking, forcing players to think several moves ahead while bowing to the undeniable whims of fortune. Within the sophisticated atmosphere of Persian royal courts, Nard was more than a pastime. It was a catalyst for intellectual discourse. Philosophers and statesmen saw in its mechanics a powerful symbol for the human condition. The roll of the dice represented the unpredictable hand of destiny, while the strategic choices mirrored the decisions one must make in navigating that uncertainty. Players were not just competing, they were learning the essential art of balancing bold risk with prudent caution, a skill vital for any leader or merchant. The game's popularity ensured its journey along the sprawling Silk Road, carried by traders and diplomats from Persia to the wider world. In every new culture it touched, Nard became a vehicle for shared learning, transmitting its sophisticated mathematical concepts and strategic principles. Its enduring legacy is etched into the very fabric of modern backgammon, a living testament to how an ancient game can become a timeless teacher, reminding us that life, much like a game of Nard, requires both a thoughtful strategy and the resilience to adapt when luck suddenly turns. Across the rugged landscapes of ancient Ireland and Britain, a king fought for his life on a checkered grid. This was Fidchel, a game of elegant strategy and profound cultural weight for the Celts. Though its precise rules have been lost to the mists of time, we know it pitted a single king piece against a surrounding force of attackers, a tense struggle mirroring the asymmetric warfare of the Viking Hnefatafl. The king's goal was a desperate race to reach the sanctuary of the board's edge, while the opposing army sought to trap and capture him, cutting off all paths of escape. Every move was a lesson in crisis management for future chieftains and warriors. The defender learned the supreme value of patience and precise positioning, understanding that a single rash move could shatter their protective formation and lead to immediate defeat. The attackers, despite their numerical advantage, practiced the art of the cordon, learning to anticipate the king's moves and slowly constrict the battlefield until no exit remained. This was not mere entertainment, it was a vital training tool for leadership under extreme pressure. Fidchel's legacy is woven into the very fabric of Celtic myth. Legends tell of heroes like Cuchulainn playing the game against gods and kings, where a move on the board was as significant as a move in battle, a test of both strategic wit and personal wisdom. Through this elegant contest, Celtic leaders internalized the core virtues of their society: critical thinking in the face of overwhelming odds, the patience to wait for the perfect moment to break through a siege, and the skillful management of limited resources to achieve a goal. Fidchel was a classroom in wood and stone, a sacred pastime that encoded the tribal values of heroism, wisdom, and resilience into a gripping contest of minds. While the Celts strategized over Fidchel, a different kind of fate was being cast under the dense canopy of the Mayan world. In the bustling plazas and sacred temples, the rhythmic rattle of beans in a gourd signaled the start of a game that was far more than a simple pastime. This was Bull, a vibrant ritual of chants, mathematics, and divine conversation. Played on a track often painted on the ground or on a portable board, the game was a dynamic spectacle. Players would cast dice, often made from marked beans or stones, their score dictating the movement of colorful pieces along a winding path. But this was never just a race to a finish line. Every throw was a high-stakes calculation, a rapid lesson in probability unfolding in real time. Players had to instantly assess the odds of a favorable roll, weigh the potential reward of a bold move against the risk of leaving a piece vulnerable, and manage their limited resources of tokens or bets. This was a practical, hands-on school for the mind, sharpening mathematical skills essential for trade, construction, and astronomy. Yet the purpose of Bull soared far beyond arithmetic. The game was deeply woven into the fabric of religious ceremony, often played during festivals dedicated to the gods of fortune and maize. A lucky roll was not mere chance, it was a sign of divine favor. A devastating loss could be interpreted as a necessary offering to appease the deities. In this way, players learned a core Mayan tenet: that human life was a delicate dance between personal agency and the unpredictable will of the gods. This spiritual dimension made Bull a powerful social engine, bringing entire communities together in a shared experience of excitement, tension, and collective belief. Betting was common, with participants wagering everything from precious jade beads to harvested crops, turning each match into a vibrant redistribution of wealth and a lesson in economic risk. From the mathematical calculations of a merchant to the spiritual surrender of a priest, Bull was a complete educational experience. It wove entertainment, education, and religion into a single, immersive activity, strengthening cultural identity and reminding every player that their actions were part of a much larger, mysterious cosmic order. Yet another Greek game honed the mind with surgical precision. Tropa, whose name means to turn or rout, was a pure contest of encirclement and capture, played out on a simple grid. Two players would arrange their pieces, and the objective was stark: to surround an opponent's piece between two of your own, effectively turning the tables and removing it from play. This was not a game of chance. There were no dice to blame for a mistake. Victory was earned solely through superior foresight and spatial reasoning. Every move was a silent, intense calculation. A player had to constantly visualize the board several turns ahead, predicting not only their own potential captures, but also the traps their opponent was laying. It was a relentless exercise in logic, a battle of wits where a single moment of distraction could lead to a devastating loss. Greek educators held tropa in the highest regard, placing it alongside physical exercise as essential training for a disciplined mind. In the gymnasium, a place dedicated to the ideal of a sound mind in a sound body, young men would engage in both physical contests and games like tropa. This was how they learned the direct consequences of every decision. A poorly considered move that left a piece isolated taught an immediate lesson in the cost of impulsivity. The game demanded immense patience, rewarding those who could set up complex, multi-move traps over those who sought quick, reckless attacks. But perhaps its greatest lesson was in ethical competition. Since both players began with equal forces on an open board, victory could only be claimed by sharper intellect and cleaner strategy, fostering a deep respect for fair play and merit. Tropa was a philosophical tool, a quiet but powerful teacher that turned a simple grid into a classroom for life, preparing citizens for the complex challenges of debate, politics, and war through the elegant, decisive act of a capture. Even a handful of simple pebbles could become a classroom in ancient Rome. The game of calculi, named for the small stones used to play it, transformed any flat surface into a grid of strategic possibility. Players would take turns placing their distinctive dark and light stones on the intersections of a scratched grid, much like the modern game of Go, but with a simpler objective. The goal was to be the first to align 5 of your stones in an unbroken row, a task that sounds straightforward but demands immense foresight. Every single placement was a critical decision. Do you focus on building your own winning line, or do you block your opponent's emerging pattern? This constant push and pull taught players to see the board not as it was, but as it could be several moves into the future. It was a rigorous exercise in spatial reasoning and predictive thinking, forcing the mind to visualize multiple potential outcomes from a single action. The game's beautiful simplicity was its greatest strength. It required no expensive board, no finely carved pieces. A child could scratch a grid in the dirt with a stick and use a collection of different colored pebbles to play. This made calculi incredibly accessible, a common sight in Roman forums, taverns, and schoolyards. For children, it was a fun and engaging introduction to the fundamentals of logic and geometry. They learned about angles and lines not from a scroll, but through the tangible act of creating them on a grid. For adults, it was a quick and social mental workout, a way to sharpen the mind amidst the daily bustle of Roman life. A game could be started and finished in minutes, yet each one packed a powerful cognitive punch. Calculi proves that the most profound educational tools are often the most humble, using nothing more than a few stones to teach the timeless skills of pattern recognition, strategic planning, and quiet concentration. While Roman soldiers played calculi with simple stones, Indian royalty transformed a cross-shaped board into a grand theater of imperial power. Pachisi, the game of kings, was far more than the ancestor of Pachisi. It was a living map of courtly intrigue and cosmic order. Its board was a vibrant cloth cross, each arm a path leading to the center, and its dice were not cubes but 6 cowrie shells, their curved backs offering odds far more complex and unpredictable. The highest possible throw gave the game its name, 25, a number that became a shout of triumph in courtyards across the subcontinent. But for the Mughal emperors, a standard board was not enough. Historical accounts describe Emperor Akbar playing a breathtaking, life-sized version in his palace courtyard at Fatehpur Sikri. The marble paving itself became the board, and the pieces were not carved tokens but 16 elegant court ladies from his harem, dressed in the 4 colors of the game, moving along the paths as the royal cowries were cast. This was a spectacular display of absolute authority, a lesson in power where the emperor himself was the master of the game, yet beneath this opulence lay a profound teacher of the mind. Every throw was a lesson in intricate probability. Players had to instantly calculate the odds of the cowrie shells, deciding whether to advance a single piece rapidly toward home or to slowly deploy their forces to create a blockade, cutting off an opponent's route in a masterful act of tactical negotiation. This act of blocking was not just a move, it was a mirror of political maneuvering, forcing rivals to either wait patiently or find costly, time-consuming alternate paths, just as a courtier might have to navigate around a powerful rival. The entire game was a dynamic simulation of statecraft. Players formed temporary alliances, betrayed them for a better position, and constantly weighed the risk of a bold advance against the security of a strong defense. It was a social engine that brought families and entire courts together for an evening of shared excitement, subtly teaching the art of diplomacy, the graceful acceptance of a rival's clever move, and the patience required to manage the fickle whims of fortune. Pachisi's journey from the royal courts of India to family game nights around the world is a powerful testament to its genius, a perfect blend of luck and strategy that continues to teach us about negotiation, risk, and the intricate dance of human relationships. The subtle encirclement of Waiki requires a different kind of perception entirely. Known in the West as Go, this Chinese game of black and white stones is a masterpiece of strategic depth. For over 2,500 years, its simple grid has been a canvas for the most complex intellectual battles. 2 players take turns placing smooth stones on the intersections of a 19 by 19 line grid, a deceptively vast field of play. The objective seems straightforward: to use your stones to surround and claim more empty territory than your opponent. But this is where the beautiful complexity begins. Unlike the direct clashes of chess, victory in Waiki is achieved through subtle influence, gradual expansion, and the patient art of making your opponent's positions inefficient. Each stone placed is not an attack, but a statement of potential, a quiet claim on the board's future. Confucian scholars revered Waiki not as a pastime, but as a vital tool for cultivating a disciplined mind. They saw in its endless variations a moving meditation on balance, patience, and foresight. Every move demanded a player to see the whole board, to understand that a local skirmish in one corner was meaningless if it cost you the entire campaign. This was a profound lesson in priorities and the dangers of short-term thinking. Chinese military strategists applied these very principles to warfare. The board became a map of a kingdom, and the stones represented not soldiers but spheres of influence and control. The game taught the art of strategic encirclement, the patience for a long campaign, and the adaptability to respond to an opponent's unexpected gambits. A reckless, aggressive move could overextend your forces and leave you vulnerable to a counterattack that loses you the game. Waiki teaches that the most powerful moves are often the quietest ones, that influence is more lasting than force. This is why it endures as one of the world's most respected mental sports, a timeless teacher offering profound lessons in concentration, adaptability, and the quiet power of strategic foresight to anyone who dares to place a stone. This constant need for cleverness, not just strength, defined the Viking approach to conflict. While Hnefatafl was the classic king's table, its close cousin Skaktafl offered a different puzzle on a slightly altered board. The core principle remained a lesson in asymmetric warfare, pitting a small, elite defending force against a larger, encircling army. But the variations in board size and specific rules meant a Viking warrior had to stay adaptable, thinking on their feet even during a simple game. They played this not in silence, but amidst the noisy camaraderie of the longhouse or during the long, dark hours of a sea voyage. As pieces were moved, strategies were debated aloud, turning each session into a lively, collaborative workshop on tactics. The game was a relentless teacher of resource management. With fewer pieces, the defender learned the immense value of each individual, understanding that a single, well-positioned warrior could hold a critical line, buying precious time for the king's escape. It celebrated ingenuity over brute force, rewarding the player who could see 3 moves ahead and use the board's geometry to their advantage. This was not a simulation of a fair fight, because the Viking world was rarely fair. It prepared them for the reality of a sudden raid, where they might be outnumbered and forced to defend a narrow pass or a ship's deck. Skaktafl reinforced the core values needed to survive in that challenging world: cleverness, perseverance, and the unwavering belief that a sharp mind could often triumph over a stronger arm. Long before the royal game of dazzled with its lapis and shell, a simpler board held sway across the ancient Near East. The Mesopotamian game of 20 squares was its venerable predecessor, a foundational pastime etched into the very cradle of civilization. Its board, a pattern of 20 squares often found scratched into palace floors or carved into clay tablets, was a common sight from the bustling markets of Sumer to the distant reaches of the Indus Valley. Players would cast tetrahedral dice, pyramid-shaped knucklebones that tumbled with unpredictable results, to move their pieces along the board's winding path. This was a race, but one that demanded sharp thinking. A player might hold a commanding lead, only to be sent back to the start by an opponent's piece or an unlucky roll. Every turn was a lesson in calculated risk, forcing players to weigh the safety of their advanced pieces against the potential reward of pushing forward. It was a masterclass in probability and forward planning, skills absolutely vital for any merchant trading goods or any official managing the resources of a city-state. Yet the game's purpose ran far deeper than mental arithmetic. It was deeply woven into the spiritual fabric of Mesopotamian life. Many boards were inscribed with symbols and prayers, and the act of playing was often a form of divination, a way to seek favor from the gods or glimpse one's destiny. A successful move might be interpreted as a sign of divine approval, while a devastating setback could be a warning from the heavens. This beautiful fusion of chance and strategy, of entertainment and spiritual inquiry, made it a game for everyone. A version of the same board has been found in royal tombs and in the modest homes of common farmers, proving that the desire to play, to learn, and to connect with the divine transcended all social boundaries. The game of 20 squares was a true cornerstone, a humble grid that laid the groundwork for centuries of game design and revealed a universal truth that the most powerful lessons are often learned not from a scroll, but from the simple, joyful act of play. A quiet rhythm of clicking seeds connects continents and centuries, from the sun-baked soils of Africa to the tropical islands of the Philippines. A shared game of brilliant simplicity emerged. This is Sunka, a beautiful variant of the ancient Mancala family, and its educational power is as profound as its reach is wide. Played on a long, beautifully carved wooden board with 2 parallel rows of 7 circular pits, The game begins with an equal number of small shells or seeds distributed into each pit. The goal is deceptively simple: to capture more seeds than your opponent. Players take turns picking up all the seeds from one pit on their side and sowing them, one by one, into subsequent pits in a counterclockwise direction. The rules for capturing are precise, turning every move into a rapid mental calculation. This was not a quiet, solitary puzzle, but a vibrant social activity, often played by women and children gathered together. The constant click and sweep of seeds fostered deep social bonds, transforming a mathematical exercise into a shared experience of laughter and concentration. Every single move was a masterclass in practical arithmetic. Players, especially children, were learning to count and calculate distributions without even realizing they were in a classroom. They developed an intuitive grasp of multiplication and division as they planned their sowing to land in empty pits or set up complex, multi-turn captures. But the lesson ran even deeper than math. The entire act of picking up seeds and sowing them into new pits was a direct, tangible mirror of the agricultural cycles that sustained their communities. Sunka became a living lesson in resource management. Do you empty a pit with a large bounty of seeds for a potentially huge payoff, risking that your opponent might benefit from your distribution? Or do you make smaller, more strategic moves, carefully hoarding your resources and slowly starving your opponent of opportunities? This constant evaluation taught foresight, patience, and the delicate balance between short-term gain and long-term security. Sunka's incredible endurance across vast distances proves a universal truth that the most powerful educational tools are often the most elegant. With nothing more than a wooden board and a handful of seeds, it wove together mathematics, strategy, and community, proving that fundamental lessons for life could be found in the simple, joyful rhythm of play. Across these 33 ancient contests, from the royal tombs of to the Viking longhouses, a few powerful threads weave them all together. The most compelling is the seamless fusion of pure chance with cold strategy. Consider the Roman game of tabula, where a roll of the dice could append the most brilliant plan, forcing a player to adapt instantly. This was not a design flaw, it was the entire point. These games mirrored the fundamental uncertainty of ancient life, where a merchant's ship could be lost to a storm or a warrior's fate decided by a stray arrow. They taught a vital life skill: how to craft a thoughtful strategy while remaining resilient enough to pivot when fortune suddenly turned. This delicate dance between control and chaos prepared players for the real world, where success demanded both careful planning and the grace to accept the unpredictable. Beyond this balance, every game served as a perfect mirror of the culture that created it. They were not abstract amusements, but reflections of core values and daily realities. The Egyptian game of Senet mapped the spiritual journey of the soul, teaching players about the divine will that governed their universe. The Indian game of Chaturanga replicated the precise structure of a classical army, its pieces moving just as infantry, cavalry, and elephants would on a real battlefield. The Aztec game of Patoli, with its sacred calendar board and high-stakes gambling, echoed a worldview where material wealth was fleeting and divine favor was everything. A society's deepest beliefs, from its spiritual fears to its military structure, were encoded right into the rules of its play. By engaging with these games, players were not just having fun, they were unconsciously absorbing and reinforcing the very principles that held their civilization together. This leads to the most ingenious purpose of these games: their dual role as both entertainment and education. They were classrooms in disguise, masterfully wrapping essential lessons inside a compelling package of fun. A child moving seeds in a game of Mancala was not just playing, They were learning arithmetic and resource management through their fingertips. A Viking strategizing over a game of Nefertafel was drilling in small unit tactics and the value of protecting a leader. The Greek game of Patia sharpened logical reasoning and foresight, skills every citizen needed for debate and governance. This was learning through lived experience, not dull lecture. The framework of ritual, storytelling, and social play made the lessons stick, transforming abstract concepts into tangible, memorable actions. These ancient cultures understood something we are still rediscovering today, that the most effective education does not feel like education at all. It feels like a game. The echoes of these ancient games are not lost to history, they are all around us. The strategic warfare of Chaturanga evolved over centuries into the global phenomenon of chess. The Roman race for escape in tabula transformed into the familiar backgammon we play today. These are not just relics, they are living proof of a timeless design brilliance, a universal appeal that has crossed oceans and millennia to entertain and teach us still. The core principles these games pioneered, the calculated risks, the spatial reasoning, the management of chance, are the very bedrock of modern board games and even the most complex video games. When you plan a city in a simulation game, you are engaging in the same resource management taught by Mancala. When you outmaneuver an opponent in a digital strategy game, you are employing the tactical foresight honed on the boards of Ludus Latrunculorum. Even our modern educational methods have embraced their power, using game-based learning to make complex subjects like mathematics and logic tangible and engaging for students. To study these ancient pastimes is to gain a profound appreciation for their creators. They were not merely designing amusements, they were encoding their worldviews, their fears, and their wisdom into interactive systems. They understood a fundamental truth we sometimes forget, that play is one of humanity's most powerful teachers. It wraps difficult lessons in the irresistible package of fun, making us want to learn, to improve, to understand. This incredible legacy is not a closed book. It is an invitation to preserve these games, to adapt them, and to ensure that their timeless lessons in strategy, probability, and critical thinking continue to challenge and inspire generations to come. What ancient game will you discover next? From the spiritual boards of Egypt to the tactical grids of Rome, these 33 ancient games reveal a universal human truth. Play has never been a mere distraction. It has always been one of our most profound and enduring teachers. These boards and pieces were classrooms in disguise, masterfully weaving essential lessons into the very fabric of fun. They taught children how to count, warriors how to strategize, and entire communities about their place in the cosmos. They shaped minds, cemented cultural values, and even influenced the course of history itself, all through the irresistible language of a game. Our ancestors understood something we are still rediscovering today, that the most effective education doesn't feel like education at all. It feels like a compelling challenge, a shared laugh, a roll of the dice. This incredible legacy is not locked away in museums. It lives on every time we sit down to play a game of chess, its DNA tracing back to the Indian battlefields of Chaturanga. It's there in every round of backgammon, a direct descendant of the Roman obsession with tabula. The next time you plan a move or calculate a risk, remember you are participating in a tradition that is thousands of years old. These stories are an invitation not just to remember but to reconnect. Perhaps you will seek out a version of Nefertafel or set up a Mancala board to feel that ancient spark of strategy and discovery for yourself. Thank you for joining this journey into the playful past. Which of these games would you most want to play? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to keep exploring history's greatest mysteries.